The little girl stood at the edge of the sidewalk just as the morning sun climbed over the rooftops, turning the quiet street gold. Her backpack was too big for her small shoulders, and her hands were clenched so tightly around its straps that her knuckles had gone pale. Cars passed, people hurried by, and no one noticed the fear in her eyes, until she looked up and saw the bikes. The sound of engines rolled through the street like distant thunder, deep and heavy, and for a moment she almost stepped back. Then she took a breath, gathered a courage far bigger than her 7 years, and asked a question that would change her life forever. Before the story unfolds, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of compassion, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel, Only Kindness. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them. Her name was Maribel Santos, and every weekday morning felt like a mountain she had to climb alone. Her mother worked the early shift at a laundry facility across town, leaving before sunrise with tired eyes and apologetic kisses pressed into Maribel's hair. Her father had been gone for nearly a year, not dead, not forgotten, just absent in that hollow way that leaves questions with no answers. The walk to school was supposed to be simple: 3 blocks, 2 crossings, 1 old oak tree near the playground, but for Maribel it had become a daily test of bravery. Older kids lingered near the convenience store, their laughter sharp and careless, sometimes aimed directly at her. A stray dog followed her once, barking so loudly she had frozen in fear. And there were mornings when the world felt too big, too loud, and too unkind for someone so small. That particular day was bright and warm, the kind of day teachers loved because it promised calm classrooms and open windows. But Maribel's stomach was tight with worry. She had slept poorly, dreaming of being chased, of shouting for help that never came. When she stepped outside, she hoped, without knowing exactly why, that something would be different. That was when she saw them parked near the corner cafe, a group of bikers, their motorcycles lined up like steel horses, chrome catching the sunlight. Leather jackets, heavy boots, broad shoulders. They looked like men from another world, the kind people crossed the street to avoid. Maribel had heard whispers about bikers, stories from adults that painted them as dangerous or wild. Yet something about the way they stood together that morning, relaxed and unhurried, made her pause instead of run. She waited, shifting from one foot to the other, heart pounding. Each step toward them felt like stepping into deep water. Her voice, when she finally spoke, came out small but steady, carried by a courage she didn't know she had. She explained that she was scared to walk to school alone and asked if they could walk with her, just that once. The street seemed to hold its breath. One of the men looked down at her, his beard streaked with gray, eyes hidden behind dark glasses. Another turned away slightly, as if unsure how to respond. For a heartbeat, Maribel feared she had made a terrible mistake. Then something shifted. One by one, the men straightened, their posture softening in a way that felt almost gentle. The man with the gray-streaked beard removed his helmet and crouched down so he was closer to her height. His name was Hector Ruiz, though Maribel wouldn't learn that until later. What she noticed first was his smile, not wide or loud, but warm, the kind that feels like shade on a hot day. Without making promises or asking questions that might overwhelm her, he nodded. Around him, the others followed suit. It wasn't a grand declaration, it was quieter than that, and somehow more powerful. They didn't start their engines. Instead, they fell into step around her, creating a loose, protective circle. Their boots moved in rhythm on the pavement, a steady sound that made Maribel's breathing slow. The world looked different from inside that circle. The laughter near the convenience store faded into the background. The stray dog, sitting near a fence, only watched as they passed. People stared, surprised, some confused, some curious. A little girl walking to school with a group of bikers was not a sight anyone expected to see on an ordinary weekday morning. As they walked, Maribel felt her fear loosen its grip. She noticed details she usually missed: the way sunlight filtered through leaves, the smell of fresh bread from a bakery opening for the day, the chalk drawings on the sidewalk left by kids who played there the afternoon before. The bikers didn't talk much. They didn't need to. Their presence alone said enough. For the first time in weeks, Maribel felt safe. What Maribel didn't know was that these men carried their own heavy stories. Hector had spent years rebuilding his life after mistakes that once defined him. Another, a tall man named Tomas Vega, worked nights at a shipping yard and spent his days fixing bikes to keep his mind quiet. There was also Luis Calderon, who rode not for rebellion but for the calm it gave him, a way to outrun memories of loss. Each of them understood fear in their own way. Seeing it in Maribel's eyes stirred something deep and protective, something that reminded them why they had fought so hard to become better men. When they reached the school gate, Maribel stopped. The bell hadn't rung yet, and children were gathering in small groups, backpacks slung over shoulders, voices rising in excited chatter. The bikers paused with her, careful not to step too far onto school property. Maribel looked up at them, her face bright in a way that surprised even her. She waved before running to join her classmates, her steps light and quick. The men watched until she disappeared into the crowd, then turned back toward their bikes, the morning suddenly quieter. They thought that was the end of it. A single act of kindness on an ordinary day. But kindness has a way of echoing. The next morning, Maribel stood at the same corner, her backpack still too big, but her shoulders a little straighter. She hadn't asked her mother's permission to look for them, she wasn't sure how to explain what had happened. She just hoped, and there they were again, as if the world had decided to answer her hope with action. This time, she didn't hesitate. The walk felt shorter, easier. By the third day, it felt almost normal. Other parents began to notice. At first, there were worried glances, hushed conversations. But then they saw how the men walked with care, how they kept a respectful distance from the school, how Maribel laughed as she talked about her spelling test or the book she was reading. They saw the way the bikers greeted other children with nods and smiles, never overstepping, never demanding attention. Slowly, suspicion gave way to curiosity, and curiosity to something like gratitude. One morning, a boy named Julian, who lived a block away from Maribel, joined them. Then another child, and another. Soon, the group walking to school grew, a small parade of backpacks and bright sneakers surrounded by leather jackets and quiet strength. The bikers adjusted without complaint, spreading out to make room, watching traffic, signaling when it was safe to cross. They became part of the neighborhood's rhythm, as ordinary and as welcome as the sunrise. For Maribel, the change was profound. Her teachers noticed she raised her hand more often, her voice steadier. She stopped asking to stay inside during recess. At night, she slept without nightmares, her dreams filled with bikes that didn't roar but hummed softly, carrying her through sunlit streets. Her mother noticed too. She didn't know the full story at first, only that her daughter seemed lighter, happier. When she finally learned the truth, she cried, not from fear, but from relief. She met Hector one afternoon, thanked him with tears in her eyes, and saw in his face the quiet pride of someone who had found purpose in an unexpected place. The world outside their neighborhood didn't always understand. There were comments online when someone shared a photo. There were questions, raised eyebrows, assumptions. But the truth was simple and visible every morning. A group of men choosing to show up, choosing to protect without expecting anything in return. In a time when so many people looked away, they walked forward. As weeks passed, the walks continued, even when schedules changed, even when the weather turned hot or rainy. The bikers adjusted their routines, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. It wasn't about being heroes. It was about consistency, about showing a child that she mattered enough for adults to care. One bright afternoon, the school held an assembly about community helpers. Maribel sat in the front row, her hands folded in her lap. When the teacher asked if anyone wanted to talk about someone who helped them feel safe, Maribel stood up. Her voice trembled at first, then grew stronger as she spoke about the men who walked her to school, about how they made her feel brave. The room was quiet when she finished, a silence filled with something like awe. Near the end of the school year, the bikers gathered one last time at the corner cafe. Summer was coming, and the routine would change. Maribel ran up to them, her hair bouncing, her smile wide. She hugged Hector without hesitation, then the others, one by one. It was a small gesture, but it carried the weight of everything they had built together. The men watched her walk away, taller now, more confident, disappearing into a future that felt a little safer than it had before. If this story has touched your heart so far, take a moment to pause and reflect. Acts of kindness don't have to be loud to be life-changing. If you've felt that truth while listening, consider liking this video and sharing it with someone who needs a reminder that good still exists. Maribel grew, as children do, faster than anyone expects. She would remember those mornings not as a time of fear, but as a time when the world surprised her with goodness. The bikers would go on with their lives, carrying the quiet knowledge that they had made a difference. And the neighborhood would remember too, long after the sound of engines faded, that kindness can come from the most unexpected places. Before we reach the end, there's a special request. Please comment the word kindness below if you believe small acts can change lives. Your comments help spread this message further than you might imagine. In the end, this wasn't just a story about a 7-year-old girl and a group of bikers. It was a story about courage meeting compassion on an ordinary street in the daylight. It was about how fear can shrink when surrounded by care, and how people who are often judged can become guardians without asking for praise. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of a time someone showed up for you when you were afraid, please engage with this video. Like it, share it, and let the world know that kindness still walks beside us, one step at a time.